I apologize if I look down a lot during this. I had to write everything down because it was a lot of stuff. I've decided to do this video because I'm not happy right now, and I really haven't been in a long time. And before I continue this, I would like to make two big advisories. The first one's a trigger warning. I will be talking about depression, anxiety, suicide, and the general ugliness of life. And the second is that I'm not blaming or victimizing anyone. I am purposefully not giving names of specific details about certain events because I love my friends and I love my family, and I have no desire to cause pain. That these are things that I need to get off my chest and get out of my head and in the open so that I can start moving on with my life and begin healing. I'm going to start with the most recent and move backwards, and then I'm going to move forwards again because I feel like that's the best way to try and tell this story. I'm going to begin with the event that directly led to me being where I am right now, sitting in front of this camera. This probably doesn't start where most people think it starts. I've managed to trace my current mental decline to March of 2015, when I found out that my boyfriend at the time had been hanging out with his ex-girlfriend behind my back, and that he had cheated on me with her. This led to some pretty serious confidence issues and some pretty serious trust issues, and I was already in the process of transferring schools. I was already kind of dealing with a lot. I had recently lost my grandma, and I wasn't in a real good mental place before that. And I was dealing with a lot of regret about not being home, and a lot of guilt about not being able to spend as much time with my family as I felt like I should have. Without March, I would not have moved back in with my parents. But because of March, I moved in with my boyfriend at the time because I thought I was in love, and I figured if I was there, he couldn't be hanging out with the other girl. Living with him was not a good decision, and I was not a priority for him and was constantly made to feel less important than plates. When I went to Northwest, we split up, and it was definitely for the better. I didn't really have much attachment left to him at that point and was just kind of ready to move on with my life. I had gone to Northwest because my best friend at the time was a student there, and making friends has always been pretty hard for me. So I chose Northwest because I already had a friend. Well, a couple months after I transferred up there and started school at Northwest, my friend dropped out of school, and it left me pretty high and dry. I didn't really have anyone to talk to and stopped talking to her because of the situation. In October of that year, I came back into contact with a kind of friend from high school, and we started dating, and I fell really hard. Within 4 months, we had signed a lease to move in with each other, and I was just head over heels. But despite all of this, I felt like I really didn't have any friends, and I felt like I wasn't really good enough for what was going on in my life. And in December of 2015, I started having thoughts of suicide and went back on antidepressants. And my boyfriend at the time was insanely supportive. He was there for me through everything, convinced me to go back into therapy, and talked to me for hours, and really just became my absolute best friend. And I really didn't get better. I would be really happy at times, and then there are times that I would just sit on the couch and wish that I was dead. I wasn't actively trying to kill myself, but I was not actively trying to live either. and I was getting worse, and I began to lose energy, and I began to lose motivation, and I started struggling in school. And in August of 2016, I had a massive breakdown. I began therapy, and I went on a cocktail of different medications for depression and anxiety, and I pretty much became a walking zombie. My medications would make me sick to my stomach, and I would sleep all the time, and I just didn't feel like a person, if that makes sense at all. I made the decision that it would be best if I went off of my medications. They weren't doing anything but making me sick. And my therapist that I had been seeing was the opposite of helpful. She would not remember my name, and every session would be like an entry session. She would be taking the same information over and over again, and she would tell me things like the only way I was ever going to get better is if I gave my life to God. And I didn't believe those things. I still don't believe those things. And I think that if you're a therapist, remembering your clients is kind of important. And she just wouldn't, so I stopped going to my sessions. I was in a really dark place, and I was really using my boyfriend as my only source of comfort. He was the person that I told everything to. I talked to him about everything, and he was really just, he was my everything. He was all I talked about. And shortly after that, we started talking about getting married. And I kind of used this wedding as a ray of hope, and I used it as something to look forward to and something worthwhile in my life. And then in February of 2017, we officially got engaged. And then in March, he left me when he could no longer handle my current mental state and the pressure that it put on our relationship. There were other reasons, but because he was at one point my best friend and someone that I thought I was going to be with forever, I'm not going to disclose those, because neither of us need to deal with the backlash of that. I was devastated. I reached the absolute lowest point I've ever been at in my life, and I had to live with him for another month before I could officially drop out of college and move home. Because at that point, I just kind of lost the will to do anything. And I dropped out of school, and all I did was work, because at least I had my job, and I enjoyed my job. Things at the apartment were obviously hostile. We would fight constantly and scream at each other. And I was kind of made to feel like this was all my fault. I ended up having to have him clear everything dangerous from the apartment. No knives, no razor blades, no pills, no guns. I thought about suicide constantly, and I attempted to formulate plans. I went to Walmart to buy an exhaust hose to attach to the back of my car, and I couldn't find one. And that's kind of what puts me to where I currently am. I'm back on medication. Most times I feel like they don't work, but the difference is that I'm trying to get better now. I'm trying to move on with my life, and I obviously don't love him anymore. And would even go as far as to say that I never really knew him. he would say that he didn't let people get to know him, and after what happened, I believe that because the person that I knew would never have done or said those things. The hardest part of all of that for me was losing my best friend. I lost the person that I talked to about everything, and I no longer had that. I really see the entire situation in a completely different light now, and look back on it and realize that things maybe weren't as perfect as I thought they were. So let's go back to where most people who have known me for a while would think that this started, and that would be spring 2013. I was a senior in high school, and I was about to go to Ireland with my high school choir, but I come from a family that doesn't have much money, and money has always kind of been a form of anxiety for me. So when I missed a payment, my director, that I will not name because he's not worth it, began threatening to kick me off of the trip. That, combined with dating a guy who had a pretty serious temper, led to my first diagnosis: general anxiety disorder. I was prescribed a low-dose antidepressant to stop panic attacks, and now's where I really need to go back further, to spring of 2012, where most people don't know that I swallowed a full bottle of mixed pills. I think there was Tylenol, ibuprofen, Benadryl, and a couple other things that I don't really remember, and sat in a bathtub for an hour and a half. And then, while I was thinking about dying and kind of going in and out, I remembered that my great-grandma would be crushed if I killed myself. If I had died, I think that they could understand it, but if I killed myself, it wasn't okay. So I called my sister, who stayed with me without ratting me out, thankfully, until she thought I was safe. She kept me awake and did whatever she had to do to make sure that I was going to wake up the next morning. That's when the panic attacks actually started. And that's really when most of the depression started. And so when my doctor put me on a medication for my anxiety, I specifically asked for something that had an antidepressant in it, because I was too embarrassed and scared to tell anybody what had happened. I was afraid that if I did, they would institutionalize me. So I lied and got what I needed anyway. I really kind of suppressed that until spring of 2013, when I had a panic attack in chamber choir after a closed-door meeting with my choir director and got sent home. I had to walk through the entire school and through the nurse's office and the main office and get in my car, and I was hyperventilating and crying and I couldn't stop. And when I got home, my parents were there, and that kind of leads me back to where I was. I was really certain that getting away from where I was would fix things. And so I went to Texas, and I started classes, and I started working out all the time, and nothing really changed. I was just more isolated. I had left all of my old friends, and they'd managed to move on without me. They'd made new friends, and I was never good at making friends. So I had a select few people that I really talked to down there and trusted. And it got to a point where when I would come home from breaks, I would cry before I would go back because I would be so upset about it. And eventually, after the death of my great-grandma, I took the belt of my hot pink bathrobe and I tied it around my neck and I passed out. The belt was not tight enough, and I woke up and took it as a sign that the universe wasn't ready for me to die, and I initiated my transfer the next day because I decided that I needed to go home and be with my friends and family. From there, I can go back to where this actually started for me. This is a story that I have told 4 people, and it's a very difficult one because it's got a lot of weird emotions where I'm not really 100% sure that I knew what I was doing, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure I did, and that scares me. In 2003, I was 8, and I did not feel important. I was regularly beaten and mistreated by someone that I am now very close to and love very much. But at the time, things between us were not okay. And when I would try to reach out and tell people about it, I was told that it was my fault, that I was antagonizing her, and that this person didn't have the luxuries that I had in life, and that pretty much I was always given an excuse for her behavior and was told that it was my fault. And I'm not going to tell those excuses because they're very telling, and I love that person dearly. I was physically and mentally abused. I still suffer with problems from it, down to the fact that I have problems with my weight because I would regularly be called a fat gal, and that stuck with me. After a particular fight, I don't remember really what it was about. I remember that I had a big old handprint across my back that stung. I was sent to my room, and I sat on my bed. I was supposed to be cleaning as punishment for antagonizing. And I had a white jewelry box that I set on the corner of my dresser. And the top of this white jewelry box had, probably this big, a little stained glass window with a pink rose on it. And I threw the jewelry box, and the glass broke. And I went over to it, and I picked up a piece of glass, and I tried to slit my wrists. The glass was thick, and it was dull, and it didn't cut. And that was kind of the moment that I knew that I was different. I kind of knew that that wasn't normal. And I got really embarrassed about it. So I didn't tell anyone. I hid the scratches on my wrists and pretended like it never happened and tried to forget it. Now I've reached a point in my life where I'm done trying to forget these things because they keep happening. I want to stop keeping things secret because it's not doing me any good. And I'm putting this out here because I feel like it's going to be a really good first start in trying to open up more.